How do you keep all the plates spinning? When you run a business, it can often feel like an endless dance of priorities, projects, people, plans. There's no denying that there's lots of hats to wear, there's lots of plates to spin, lots of balls to juggle. But actually, what helps? What works? What keeps you on track? Whilst the juggle is real, finding solutions and ideas, frameworks, things that you can implement for yourself is often a battle in itself. And that's why I have invited the remarkable Danny Simpson to join our conversation today. Now, first met Danny in his capacity as Managing Director for Sales Geek. If you aren't familiar with this global franchise, please check them out because they have a powerful mission to change the world and how the world perceives sales. But after chatting with Danny, I came to realise he wasn't just your average, entrepreneur. And I got a really good sense of who he was as a human being as well. And from what I know of Danny, he's all about doing the right thing, doing it with integrity and making a difference. And that's what a lot of the things of what I'm about as well. So Danny, I'm going to welcome you. The assumption is because you are used to working at board level across diverse, thriving businesses, you're a natural plate spinner. That would be a safe assumption to make. But I'm hoping you're going to be willing to crack into some of your experiences with us today. So thank you. Welcome to the Alchemy of Alignment.
Thank you for having me, and thank you to the listeners for choosing, I guess, to listen to the podcast in some capacity with myself. So thank you.
Yes. And I always like to express my gratitude to our guests as well, because there are so many podcasts, there are so many things fighting for our attention, and it's really quite a humbling thing that somebody's choosing to spend their time with us in this way today. So I gave a little bit of an intro into what you're all about, Danny, but there's nothing like hearing your experience. I hope I did it justice of what I know of you, but what else makes you you?
So thank you. Great question. I guess today I work across 7 businesses. So I've got a portfolio of 7 different businesses. That's a combination of some that I've got investment into and some that I'm managing and leading. Some that I am working at a fractional basis in a capacity of as a consultant, if you like, or supporting measures. And some is just voluntary non-exec roles, which I've had for a number of years, which feed my passion for growth and learning and also impact, right? But I guess I never set out to be this person at 16-year-old. If you'd have told 16-year-old Danny when he was leaving school, this is what 40-year-old Danny would be doing, and I said, you're a dirty liar, and that's never going to happen. So, I was a simple lad from Rochdale, so I didn't think I'd ever be doing what I'm doing today.
Oh, I love that, Danny. Thank you. And I love that reference to 16-year-old self. I think I'd have a similar conversation with 16-year-old Suzy. but as I kind of alluded to, the assumption can be perceiving, and the assumption could be a man of your caliber must be a pro at spinning plates, right? What would you say to that?
It's an interesting one. I think, yes, we spin some plates. I guess the more plates you add, the goal gets to not drop any plates, right? But occasionally some drop. That's what happens. And I guess you find your path by making lots of mistakes. And I've probably got an encyclopedia on mistakes versus one page of A4 of success. So yeah, but I think, you find your way, and I think there's an element of we all start out in life faking it until we make it, right? And I honestly believe, do we ever make it? Because things, especially today, the way they evolve, and I think everyone's definition of making it is different as well. To some people, it's living in a nice house with a nice destination, multiple millions of pounds in the bank, nice car, nice drive. Some people's definition of success is work-life balance. Some people's definition of success is, being around for my kids. Some people's definition of success, and everything in life, what we find, depending on how far you want to push that definition of success needle, means that ultimately somewhere you're sacrificing something else, because we all have 24 hours in the day, and ultimately when you invest in them hours, you are sacrificing things that you're not doing. So you've got to get better at making decisions of where you invest your time, because especially when you move through a career in some capacity, everybody definition of success again, different people want more of your time, especially when you become more senior in an organisation. I'm sure everybody and your listeners will be familiar with, if you're in a leadership capacity, when your team say, can I just have 5 minutes? And that 5 minutes very quickly becomes an hour. So you have to become really disciplined with some of the things that you're doing. And sometimes even more disciplined. And that drives different behaviours, right? And different outcomes. Because sometimes, especially when certain people may, again, relate to leadership, sometimes at our early days, we want to be a people pleaser. And when you're really having to split your time, you've got to be able to make impact, give value, and create and make that person feel valued, where they don't feel that they've got a short exchange of time. But so making them feel that you're accessible, but at the same time, it's got to be pretty punchy.
Oh, Danny, thank you. And it's so interesting, isn't it? Because those who are regular listeners or watchers will know we always theme the episode around the big question. But actually, the thing's not the thing, as we often
Correct.
find. And I was going to come straight in and ask you, how do you keep all the plates spinning? And I'm already kind of sensing a pattern from that in the decision making and the prioritizing. Would you say that's a big influence in how you spin your plates?
Definitely, and I think you've got to make the mistakes, right? So I guess running different multiple businesses, and I think my biggest success was Mid Communications. I built that from nothing to it was an O2 franchise. We had 16 stores, 180 staff. We were in just short of £22 million turnover business, 21, £22 million turnover business. Developed lots of people, had a great senior team. We were investors in people, platinum, twice accredited, 2019 and 2022. So from my perspective, that was me in my own version of success, hitting the pinnacle, right? Big business, lots of people employed, good responsibility to giving people opportunities, mainly around my local area of Manchester, and developing people, right? So I think the big thing that we do on there is you learn to, your businesses are built by developing people. But creating, and you learn different things. So at 28, firing into that position, and before that I've been in telco, so I was always a very quick promoter. I think I was one of the youngest area managers at 3 when I worked for them, and I guess to become a sales director at 29-year-old, and then to become a CEO probably at 35 was quite young, right? And I think the average age in the UK for a CEO now is 50 something, 54 I think it is. So that comes with its own challenges. At 28, I'm a male, so I mature slower than women. So I've still got probably some maturing to do. And in your 20s, you think you're invincible, and your ego takes a lot of ownership of that. So I was grateful that, first of all, I guess a big part of my success is my wife. Finding that life partner who supports what you're doing, is on board with it, because there's nothing worse than when you don't support each other at home, and then both of the people going to work to do what they're doing. You're already going to work not in the right mindset. So I think to find a life partner that really gets each other's journey, and I was super lucky. I met my wife when I was 17, and we've been together ever since. So 27 years on, we're still together. So I think that was number one, because when I went through what I would call my stupid stage, and I think there's more descriptive words to use, but I won't use that today on this one with you. But when I went through a bit of a stupid stage of too much success too soon, there was a little bit of that where I needed my wife to put me in my place and say, listen, just don't forget who you are, where you come from, and what you're doing, right? And I was grateful for that conversation at 29, and I can still hear the conversation now in my head. But you then start to get into it and realise that actually what I wanted to achieve of all those things, of building a business and scaling things, that actually it's not all glitz and glam. And leading a business, sometimes you've got to be prepared that when you get into that C-suite position, it's a lonely chair, especially when you're then become MD, CEO, founder, owner, and it's just you. Whether you're at you just started and it's you, and day one in your business, and you sat there in a coffee shop, just you, your laptop, and nobody else. And it goes full circle, right? Because I exited that business in 2024, sold it back to Telefonica, 7-figure sale. And you almost go full circle again. Within a space of a couple of months, I'm sat there with, my phone's quiet, my WhatsApp's not pinging, and you feel like, your purpose is gone. So I think, be careful what you wish for, because people sometimes build a business with the view of, I'm going to build it, create wealth, and sell it. But my view, I mean, our sale was a little bit forced, right? But because O2 wanted to take the franchise back, I've always believed that, if you can make a machine that prints money, why would you sell it? And if you can make a machine that prints money and you enjoy running it, and along with the people that you're running it with, and even more so, why would you sell it, right? So, so I guess I've got to keep the plate spinning then in that situation, and building a group of businesses out from that, and then doing what I've done now with Richard at Sales Geek, and my other non-exec roles. 2 of them are national roles. I guess it's having a really good team, being disciplined with my time, and getting out of your own way. Because I think a lot of founders become the bottleneck of the business. I don't want to lose control and give control up. But I think you've got to trust people, right? And you've got to empower people to make mistakes and create that environment for them. So if you're addicted to being the most needed person in the business, I guess that's going to cost you in some capacity. And I think the other thing would be for me is the goal is to build the systems and the people, because culture eats strategy for breakfast, and that's the reason why I wanted to test how good our culture was with investors in people and silver to platinum. And so I was really lucky that, hiring A players, getting the right team, people that are going to force you to be different, diverse people. I've championed numerous amounts of females into leadership positions, and in boardrooms and in my own businesses. Because I think everybody that's different to you has something different to bring to the table, and that makes you a better team and a better person and a leader. And leaning into that rather than leaning away from some of those things, and having sometimes those uncomfortable conversations, whether that's you having them or you being on the receiving end of those uncomfortable conversations, right? So sometimes we've got to know what we're doing wrong before we can get it right. And I think if you work with the right people, they'll tell you that. But I think for the men that's listening to this, I think the biggest thing we can do, or the biggest thing I've understood as a man, is managing our ego. When I coach men, I sometimes feel like the first 30 minutes is getting past their ego. Whereas if I coach a woman, they don't bring an ego into the room. They bring a level of emotional regulation and accountability and responsibility to the room straight away. So I feel like we can start moving the needle quicker with females, which is why in my non-exec roles, all the leaders that I work with are female. For that reason, that I want to move them on. And I'm not saying that men and women are better than men. I'm not saying women are better than men and men are better than women. I'm just saying there is a balance, and there's always been a gender challenge. And I guess I wanted as a leader to purpose beyond profit was make impact with young people. I don't think the education system's great. It definitely failed me. So I don't think I want to help children understand that doesn't always have to be about college and university to be successful, and it's about being happy to some degree, but doing what you love. Help the less fortunate than ourselves. That's why I do what I do with Cash for Kids. I sit on the national board, and here in Manchester I'm a trustee. So because children don't ask to be born, right? So trying to give them better circumstances than what they find themselves in, and better people's lives. That's what I do with a job, right? A leader should improve their team, and in turn your team should improve you. But that comes back to, again, if you come into the room with your ego and whether you use 2 ears and 1 mouth.
Danny, such an inspiring insight into you and what you have achieved, and there's so many things that I feel like I need to go back to there. You mentioned those 3 things in terms of good people around you, and I'm so glad that you mentioned your wife as well, because Alchemy Virtual Assistants is a husband and wife run team.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't change it for the world, because the balance that Paul and I have between who we are, how we do things, for us, I know it's not for everyone, totally just works. He keeps me grounded. He calls me out. When my ego surfaces, he pushes it back. That dynamic that we have as business partners, but as husband and wife and parents as well, I cannot like state how powerful that has been for me. So to hear when someone ever credits their other half, I'm like, ooh. So I feel
Yeah.
like we needed to give that a little bit of space. But the ego thing is really interesting, isn't it? And I think the greatest thing I've learned in business is you have to get uncomfortable, and you need
Right.
to learn to be comfortable with that. And I think starting a business, in my experience, and I'm really interested in yours, it's been the greatest personal development I've ever done. Like,
Yeah.
I've learned more about myself in the past 10 years in business than I did my entire life before. Would you feel the same?
Definitely. I think when you run a business and it's to some degree successful, and everyone, like I say, I'll just always keep putting that in there. Definition of success is different for everybody, right? So some people, they would think that, having that is great, but I think we push for different circumstances. But I think having those self mastery, mastery of self, is really important. And I don't think that if I hadn't run a business would I've learned as much. No, I think you definitely learn who your real friends are, and you definitely learn who's who, um, and who the right people are around you, and who's around you for the right reasons and wrong reasons, right? So I always think about, if I was to ring people up at 3 o'clock in the morning and ask for help, who's going to answer the phone? And that's about having deep and meaningful conversations and relationships with people, making emotional connections based on trust, right? So I think business teaches you a lot about life, yourself, and others, more than you probably get in a job. And I've been super lucky that I've worked with and employed some absolute world class people who have gone on to do bigger and better things than I would have ever done with them, right? And that's the gig. And I've been super lucky that I've had some really great mentors in my life. So I guess no matter where you are, whether you're in a job, building a career, or whether you're running your own business and wherever you are, find somebody that you can have as a mentor, because this is I try to choose a black chair because I always say that it's a lonely big black chair. When I was a kid growing up watching Mastermind, if I think it was Mastermind, um, and there was another program called This Is Your Life, and I always think to myself, it's a lonely big black chair that we sit in. And you've got to make some tough decisions sometimes that you can't talk to people about, right? Your partner might not know what you're going through. You can't talk to your team and your senior team because sometimes the decisions may impact them. So we walk around with all this burden on our shoulders, and where do we go to as a leader? And that's where I think great mentors, and I've been super lucky to have mine, and I'd always praise them publicly for the time that they've given me. So Phil Jones, who's the MD at Brother, and Steve Johnson, who's the chief exec of M Brown. I can definitely say those two have enhanced my career, my leadership skills, challenged me, made me a better person professionally, told me the truth straight down the barrel. And I don't think I would have had the career I would have had if it weren't for my mentors, my great senior team around me, and my wife. Without those three
Mm,
things, I
mm.
probably wouldn't be where I'm sat today and wouldn't be able to go on the next part of the journey.
Oh, Danny, thank you. And for anyone that's listening, going, "Wow, I need to get a mentor," because I wholeheartedly agree with you. I think mentors, coaches, whatever the label is, having that that right support is
Yeah.
imperative. So if anyone's listening, going, "Well, how do I find that?" Like, what would you, what would experience suggest? What advice would you give?
Find somebody, my experience is find somebody that is doing a role and doing a job that you admire and you look up to, and that you
Mm,
respect and admire, and find somebody that's doing stuff that you've already done and doing it on a bigger level. Because often what we find in today's world, especially with social media, we're overloaded with content, we're overloaded with experts. Come on this masterclass, I'll send you this. And they always say wealth whispers. So anybody that's got, significant wealth that's on social media, I mean, there's a few, not everybody, so this is the majority, not everybody. They're not there selling you a course, because they're out there creating value and doing what they're doing. So find somebody that inspires you, and find somebody that you admire, and then start to build that relationship with them. and then just ask them and just say, look, I really enjoy the time. I know you've not got a lot of your time, but I would really value more around your advice on this. And I guess don't try and always define it as a mentor, because I worked with Phil for 7-8 years. I saw him probably on a consistent basis of once a quarter. I probably see him maybe once, twice a year now. We never branded it as mentorship. We just branded it as two people getting together, talking about business and helping each other.
Yeah.
When you start putting labels on things sometimes, I think it makes it too scripted, and there's an expectation on both parties. Whereas without knowing it, I would sit and talk to Phil and Steve, and they were asking my opinion on their stuff, and I'm like, I'm not even qualified to answer the questions of the things that you're doing, right? And you're my sort of one of my business inspirations. So why do I have the right to advise on this? But that was just the way that they were, and that's what you learn, the reverse mentoring, right? That we can always learn from the next generation. I think even more so today. I think there is now the most generations there's ever been in the workforce. I think there's 6 generations in the working environment, and I don't believe there's a challenge. I think there's a myth about the younger generations and how they work, but my opinion is that it's really interesting, because I think I made a note of this just before I came on here, that generations don't clash because of their attitude, they clash because of their lived experience.
Oh.
So what I mean by that is, I have a certain way of doing stuff, and I remember when I was growing up, my mum and dad would be like, "Are you mad? Are you crazy? Just get a job for life, right? Find a job and do it. What are you doing? This is." Whereas today, if somebody came into you and said, "I've been doing a job for 10 years," you'd be like, "God, they're playing it safe, aren't they? God, they must be really Bob." Whereas back in the day, if somebody came to you and they'd moved lots of jobs, you'd be like, "What's wrong with this person? They're a bit of a job hopper." So it's just lived experience that causes some of the challenge between that intergenerational conversations, and I'm able to try my best to stay neutral in that, or learn the most from that, because my eldest is 21 and my youngest is 8. So letting children lead me in certain capacity, because they can get to the goal sometimes quicker than I can. I'm a millennial, so I've been sort of had technology brought into my life. My son's been born with technology in his hand, so they know how to use it a lot quicker than me. So, again, that comes back to the ego, doesn't it? Ego and arrogance would tell me that I'm right, you're wrong, and what do you know? But actually, the next generation can teach us a lot of things about how we get to the goal quicker and smarter, and I can share my lived experiences to try and help them on their career a little bit. And that's how I define that, really. So it's interesting, isn't it? And I'm sure I'll have an opinion about my son, and my son's going to have an opinion about his kids, and so on and so forth. So they are really interesting things. It's just about mastery of mind and mastering ourselves, really, because it's how we respond to stuff rather than what's done to us.
Yeah, you're so right. And it's fascinating, isn't it? Because I am a lifelong learner, and I think my son in particular, who's 10, has taught me so much. And the difference, as you say, between I cringe to call myself a millennial, but I am. And I remember, I'm so grateful that I grew up before social media and that technology was introduced. But yeah, the gap between, I feel, my generation and my kids, it feels significant. But then where there's a significant anything, there's learning opportunities, isn't there? There's connection opportunities and this kind of partnership approach. And it would be remiss of me not to ask, Danny, because I know a lot of people that I come across through my work, they often find the surrounding themselves with the right people thing quite tricky. And
Yeah.
I know I'm still figuring this out. And I personally think it's another one of those things that you don't kind of arrive at, do you? You're not like, I've got this perfect team now, everything's great. It's like, well, no, because life evolves, things happen, you're always responding. So if you would agree with what I've just shared there, again, what would your take be on building a team, whether it be outsourcing to a virtual assistant, whether it be outsourcing and bringing a director in, employing in any capacity, like you say, let's drop the labels,
Yeah.
building a team? what are the most valuable things that people should be doing or thinking about?
That's a great question. I think my view on that would be, what are the things, writing down the things that I'm good at and writing down the things that I'm not great at, and then where do I find the people that can help me with the things that I'm not good at, and then try and stick in my lane. And whether that's full time, part time, fractionally or not, and I think the world of fractional is becoming bigger now. I think we see that at Sales Geek, and I'm sure you're seeing that with where you are. The world today wants to work very differently than it worked 3-4 years ago, and the world next year will work very differently again. Technology and the pace is moving us on at quite a relentless pace at the moment. So for me, it's getting access to experts, whether that's a full time, fractional, part time, whatever. Just get access to it. If I go in, I get the pleasure of going in and speaking to students at primary school and high school just to try and inspire them and lift their heads up, because I live in Greater Manchester and there's boroughs of Manchester where some of them children look at Manchester and can only aspire to get to the town centre. Right, they've never even been into the town centre because some of them are disadvantaged. So, and poverty is a real thing, right? We have this stat at Cash for Kids that when I started with them, 1 in 3 kids in Manchester lived in poverty. It's now 1 in 2. So, and it used to be 1 in 4. So that stat's not getting better; it's getting worse. So I want to try and inspire young people to think bigger and follow their own dreams and passions. And no one can tell you what you can and can't do. The only limits you set in lives are the ones you set yourself. But I'd probably start by again making sure you manage your egos, right? If I'm in the room where I'm the most correct person, and I think I put this on my LinkedIn today, right? So if I'm in the room where I'm the most correct person, I'm in the wrong room. And you've got to be brave enough to make mistakes. I'd sooner be criticised for making a mistake than criticised for not trying at all. And I think that's about being bold and brave and being comfortable, but you've got to be uncomfortable first. So I think there's lots of different things, but I think you'll always find something of there's whatever we see on social media sometimes is just a veneer. And if I'd have put my life in 2019 on social media, that was probably business-wise, life-wise, I couldn't have ticked any more boxes. But personally, I was the most unhappy I'd ever been, because I was looking at the person I was in the mirror, and I was overweight. I hated who I was looking at. And I realised I'd just been abusing myself for everybody else. I've probably been present for my family, which is great. I've always made a commitment that no matter what happens in life, my family's the only thing that's not for sale. Everything else I'll trade, my time, and I'll give every business at 150%, but that's the one thing that's not tradable. And realistically, I'd spent time giving my time to everybody else. I'd not put my own oxygen mask on. So I went on a bit of a self-discovery, and I went, and over the next 12 months, 2 years, I went on and lost 4.5 stone and got myself fit and healthy and did what I needed to do and started to feel better about myself. And that is such a true saying, I know it's cliche, but when you sat on a plane and they tell you to put your own oxygen mask on first, and I was probably in the realm of burning myself out, if I'm honest. So I think please don't hope anybody gets to that place. You've got to take the selfish stats through the business. I've always put the money back into the business, so I was never symbolic. I never wanted to take a lot of cash out of my business, and we always had a very healthy bank account, and I always wanted to make sure that we had enough money in the business to float the business for 6 months if we had hard times. So I could have took cash out, could have bought the Lamborghinis and the Ferraris, and I'd done all of those things, but that really wouldn't be me. I think my experience is that they're much nicer to look at than they are to drive. And it becomes a social status, and I'd spent so much time investing into everything else, I've not invested in myself. And then you realise it's tough, it's hard, you're in a lonely place, you don't look great, you don't feel great, and actually then you think, well, what have I done it all for? Everybody else
Yeah.
is happy but me.
Thank you for your honesty there. I mean, I know I can relate to what you're sharing there. I've had a couple of patches of what I would define as burnout, and it was it was grim. It was grim, and it is. And I know a lot. Unfortunately, I know a lot of business owners who have achieved that perception of success and not, and it didn't feel good.
No.
So I think, you know, having the courage to share those experiences is immensely valuable. And
I just think nobody wants to be the richest person in the graveyard, right? What's the point in creating all the wealth if you can't enjoy it? And what's the point in, you start your own business, and it's not about trying to score people out, and you got a responsibility to them team, because they're helping building your business. But the amount of people that I see that when it comes to exit time, where you know, when I exited my business in 2024, and I can look myself in the mirror and say this, and you could probably ring my team and they would answer this, right? And I'll give you two great quick examples of what power you have the impact to have without understanding the impact that you're actually having. Because I just think leadership and doing the right thing should just be the right thing, right? It's just do the right thing, be a good human being, right? Fair, and reasonable. So firm, and reasonable are my stances in business. So I can honestly say that when we given the stores back to Telefonica, they wanted to take the franchise program back. So it's almost like a forced sale, really. And I knew there was going to be team members that was going to be made redundant. And I almost could have been a recruiter for 6 months, because I made sure that every single one of my staff, I was involved in finding them a job, were the ones that weren't going to 2P over to Telefonica. Whether they were store staff or not, I could probably say that a good 99.9% of them, I got them a job through using my network and contacts and relationships. And I think that's really important, because you're still doing the right thing, right? It's not a great situation, and I would have carried that business on. I loved it. It was me to a T, right? And it was an amazing team. We were top of the tree. We were doing everything right. So that's a real challenge when you get, but that's life, right? You can choose how you respond to that situation. And I guess the second one for me was, I was coming back from holiday last year very quickly, and I was on a plane with my wife. My wife's like, look, little boy wants to lie down, he wants to sleep with his dad. I'm going to go and sit with my brother at the front. The plane was half empty, so she's gone and sat down with her brother. And on the way up, the air steward is coming up the plane to me, and he keeps staring at me. And I was thinking, do I know this person, or is there something I should know? And as he got closer, he said, "You're Danny Simpson, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well." And if the person ever listens to this, he'll know who he is. He says, "You're Danny Simpson, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah." He said, you don't remember me, do you?" I said, "Should I?" "No, not really." He said, "I know I probably look a bit different." He said, "But I used to work for you 7 years ago. You changed my life. I came and worked for you in one of your stores, and you helped me apply for a job with Virgin Atlantic Airways because I wanted to be an air steward." He said, "You supported me and coached me to do that, helped me and give me the confidence to fill the application form in. I did that, and I didn't enjoy the environment, and I now work at EasyJet, and I love it." He said, "I just want to let you know that the way you cared for me, I'm going to care for you and your family on the plane." Sorry, he gets me. He said, and while you're on the plane, you and your family won't pay for anything. And my wife was told, and she was like, these are the small things that you don't see the value in what you create by being a great, authentic leader and leading with passion and leading with compassion. And you never know when that bumps into you in life, right? And I never asked for that to happen. That's just me doing my job, right? And that still cracks me to this day. And I've had other things that have happened, and you just don't realise the impact you're having on others until things like that happen. And they're selfless things that life come back and give you without you ever asking for it or knowing it. But tell you, they're the small things that we don't sometimes look for, and I try to look for them more now, that give me value, that says I'm doing this more right than I'm doing it wrong. Because sometimes we're our biggest critic, right? Our imposter syndrome kicks in. Can I do this? Am I up for this? Am I good enough? And that's where I think self-mastery comes in. We need to spend more time mastering that voice in our head than actually doing the things that we do, because it's the things that the voice in our head and what's in here that holds us back half the time. Most of us and most of your listeners, whether you're thinking about, should I go for that promotion, should I go for that change of job, am I good enough to do it? Yes, you've been ready for a long time. You're holding yourself back. Stop scrutinising yourself and stop. And this is definitely for females that listen, because females do this a lot more than men. You don't give yourself enough value, you don't give yourself enough compliments, and you don't recognise how quality you are. And you've been ready for a little while. Go and do it. Stop waiting. The time is now. There's not going to be a perfect moment. The perfect moment's already passed.
I've got all the feels over here, Danny. I mean, I'm still welling up over the plane story a little bit, and then that little motivation there, fed with such energy. And do you know what? I think, oh, there's so much to that, isn't there?
Yeah,
The You're 100% right. That's landed really hard with me today in a really positive way, because when we are spinning the plates, when we are juggling, when we're chasing success, when we're busy, when we're bombarded with all the veneers on social media, actually, those little moments, the impacts, the real tangible, moving moments of the impacts that we're making. And there's probably loads more stories like that you could share as examples, but there's probably loads more where we haven't realized the
yeah,
impact that we've had. And that's what gives me the kind of goosebumps, thinking actually there are people out there that are just us being ourselves, doing our thing to the best of our ability, being true to ourselves. Just that, how many lives we've actually touched in that process. And I didn't think we were going to go here talking about plate spinning, but I am so glad that we did, Danny. My goodness. And there's no right time. There's no
no,
right
no,
time. There's
just
just there's
just do
just
it, do
doing
it.
it.
You get one shot here, right? And I come back to that program. This is your life. And my best self development has always been Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And I'm not sitting on this call today saying I've got everything right, and I'm by no stretch of the imagination am I perfect. I think in everyone's story, sometimes we're either the hero, the villain, or the victim, right? But we have to be all three at certain times and recognise when we need to be, right? And that's sometimes not being a villain because we want to be a villain, right? We're being a villain because sometimes we've got to make tough decisions, and them tough decisions have impact and impact on people. But I sit there and think, Stephen Covey, as one of his habits, is begin with the end in mind. And I always come back to this: is if I'm on that show, this is your life. I'm sat in a chair at 70, and that guy's going to come over. What do I want him to say about my life when he reads it back? And that's the bit that I get the opportunity today, right now on this call, and when we finish this and we go on, and when people have finished listening to this podcast, you get the opportunity to change and impact that book now. And if we don't realise that, then please have the opportunity to have that read to you how you want to receive it. Don't let life happen to you. I always use the analogy of, I think it's a bit of a book as well, the cow and the rhino. The cow just stands in the field eating grass, waiting for life to happen to it, whereas the rhino charges on and makes things happen, and is built with armour and resilience and just charges on. Don't be scared of making mistakes, and don't be scared of failing. You can't have any success without a failure, right? Michael Jordan's missed more shots than he's took. Cristiano Ronaldo's missed more passes than he's made. Edison made 1,000 light bulbs with 1,001 that worked. So you will not have any level of success without failure. And don't be scared of what people criticise and say when you do fail, but just be comfortable with yourself, and take the opportunity, because the opportunity is here today for you now. Choose to see them, and know that you are good enough, and know that you are great enough, and know that, just push yourself to your limits. What's the worst that somebody's going to say to you? No, you're not ready. And that's one person's response. That's not everybody's response. To somebody, you are ready, and for the right room and for the right table, there is a seat waiting for you. Go and take it.
Oh, Danny, I'm going to have to finish this episode now because I need to just go out there. I'm pumped. I need to go and take some
There you go.
action.
Thank you. You're very kind.
Bang on. Thank you. Be more rhino. That's what I'm taking from this conversation today. Danny, you are a gift. Your
Thank you.
insights are I've loved this conversation today, and I'm truly grateful for you sharing this space with us. So
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
thank you for being here. We'll obviously put some links in and stuff because you're probably going to get bombarded with mentorship requests now, and and I am very grateful. Thank you for being here, and I will catch up with you soon. I'm Suzy Sanders, your ever curious host, and I'll be back with another guest soon.